There's a fine line between guiding the players and playing the game for them. Hey everyone, Utkarsh from Spiritbell Games here. You know, as GMs, when we prepare games, we like to put in a lot of effort so that we can ensure that our players have a great time. But a lot of times, the act of preparation itself gives us these entrenched expectations in the way that the game is going to go. We may be running a pre-written module, we may get attached to a scene that we've come up with, and we can start subconsciously or consciously herding the players towards those particular outcomes. Now, if you are running a pre-written story which is extremely linear and that is the story you want to tell, this video is not for you. But for everyone else, including those who are running pre-written adventures which allow for more sandboxy approaches, here are some ways to prevent railroading of players. Specifically, these are techniques taken from the OSR style. From Principia Apocrypha, I have condensed the 5 principles that Principia Apocrypha proposes into 3 actionable, simple, but not easy steps to ensure that your games don't feel railroady, that your games leaves the agency of the players with the players. Step number 1, give them options. At the highest level, this boils down to quest selection itself. One possible approach is the way that my GM, Tegan, who runs the Pandemonium campaign, has done it. He brought us all together in one single organization so that we, as player characters, have a cohesive reason to stay together. And at the same time, he set up various different problems around the world that we could choose to address, but we had to pick one to commit to for now. Everything else would continue progressing as if we were not there, but the one quest that we select would be our main quest line. The other approach, which is more closely aligned with the OSR style of play, is to let player ambition itself become the quest lines. Like, just ask your players, hey, what do you want to achieve? And then turn those long-term goals into quest lines. This is the approach that my GM, Austin, is taking. The campaign is a hexploration campaign seeded with a lot of outcomes that I assume are based off of the ambitions that we have communicated to him at the very start of the campaign. I don't actually know if we'll see those ambitions. We've just started playing, but Austin, if you're listening to this, we better see the fruits of our ambitions, or else I may have to take down this video. Of course, giving them options does not just apply at the main quest selection level, it also applies at the middle tier, which is the quest structure. Giving them options in the quest structure is the most obvious when it comes to dungeon design. If you're running a dungeon crawl, you know, hopefully, that it's a bad idea to just have dungeon rooms be linear, to go from room A to B to C. Instead, put in branches, loops, multiple different approaches. Put in ways that players can customize this experience of the dungeon to their particular choices. Now, while the structure becomes very obvious when it's something spatial like a dungeon, it's a little less obvious when you have a more abstract challenge, like social intrigue. How do the players get an audience with the queen? Do they have to follow the linear approach of diplomacy with the guards, then diplomacy with the ministers, and then diplomacy with the queen? Or are other options like infiltration and bribery also available to them? The rule of thumb that I like to go with is 2+ player ideas, where you have at least 2 options in mind, and then you're also open to player ideas. This step, to give them options, it comes from the principle from Principia Apocrypha called Be Their World. You have to create this whole sense of verisimilitude for them, and one way to do that is by giving them different possible things to do. Set up the levers, put the buttons in front of them, make this world theirs, be their world. But it's not enough to just give them options. You also have to do step number 2, which is give them information to be able to distinguish between the options being presented. This comes from the principle, get them thinking. Like, it's not enough for them to just arbitrarily roll the die and just pick one of the options. They need information about what the context of the options are and what some possible outcomes might be so that they can make informed decisions. For example, let's descend down to the lowest possible level, which is the session level play. the moment-to-moment play. Now, in a combat situation, of course, a lot of games like Draw, Steal, and Pathfinder will present various different options for players to engage with. So your work is lightened when it comes to combat. But outside of combat, how can you give them options and give them information so that they can distinguish between the options? Okay, let's say in your Pathfinder game, your players are encountering a dangerous-looking snake-like or dragon-like creature. Maybe they can take a guess. Maybe it's a wyvern, maybe it's some kind of a drake, maybe it's a baby dragon. They don't know yet. One of the players says, "Oh, I approach this creature," and then you say, "Are you sure about that?" You are implying to the player that they have two options, a choice here, which is to continue forward or to retreat. But you have not yet conveyed to them the weight of the two options. Right now, the player is working blind, and they don't know if this is a situation where they should expect the combat, if it becomes combat, to be balanced for their level, or if this is a set dressing or a narrative piece, or just a combat, but one that they're maybe not capable of handling just right now, or just not able to handle without preparation. They don't have enough information. But if you tell them that, oh, this is a dangerous creature, possibly something you cannot handle right now, now they have information. One might say that their choices have been limited now, because now it seems like they have one valid option, which is to retreat. But they could also try something other than combat. They may try a respectful approach instead of a combative one. Within Pathfinder 2nd Edition specifically, you can tell them the level of the creature, and you're communicating this to the player themselves. Don't be afraid of some amount of metagaming, because in this system, the level of a creature is a succinct and unambiguous marker of the threat that they pose to the players. So that carries in itself a lot of information. And just like we talked about doing this at the session level, you should try and do this at the quest structure level. So for example, if they're taking the bribery path or the diplomacy path, tell them about what the pros and cons of those two paths are. If you don't want to tell it to them up front, you can even include it as part of the game by letting them scout it out, just like you would in a dungeon, right? If you have multiple paths branching out, you can either tell them up front that one side is loud, the other path is quiet, but there's a sulfuric smell, or you can tell them that scouting is an option. Sometimes players are too afraid to ruin the surprises that the GM might have in store, and they don't scout enough. So just let them know that scouting a dungeon with familiars or scouting a palace with spies, those are valid options for figuring out and gaining information about their various options. So that's step number 2. Give them information to be able to distinguish between the different options. And this brings us to step number 3, the most fun one, the hardest one, and the one that you probably don't want to do too frequently. Make the choice difficult. The easiest possible way to make the choice difficult, and you have to trust me on this because I play a lot, so as a player, I feel the difficulty when this happens, is to ask them to commit to a choice. This is easiest to do at the highest level and at the lowest level. It's surprisingly most difficult to enforce in the middle level. So let's ignore the quest structure part of it. Let's just think about the quest selection and the moment-to-moment gameplay, how this plays out. So at the quest selection level, you say to them that, hey, here are the different quests that you can pursue, but they're in different geographical regions. So whichever one you go to and pursue, the others will be locked out to you. They will progress beyond your interference. At the moment-to-moment level, you can pose different quandaries. You can set certain time limits. In combat, this becomes just a choice of what do you do on your specific turn. So that's just enforced by the game system. So that's great. That we get for free. But even when it's not within combat, you can give them a choice of, oh, do you save these couple of civilians or do you go after this magic item? Here, there is one potential pitfall that you could fall into, which is to present a choice that is not really a choice. If you know your party well enough and you know that they love to do the altruistic heroic thing, you know they're going to go after these civilians and save them, and they're not going to be as tempted by the magic item, whatever it is. So instead, for the altruistic group, you can present a choice that's really difficult for them. You can say, hey, on the one hand, you have a handful of NPCs that you could save, NPCs that you do not know well. And on the other hand, you have a favored NPC that you know well, who owes you some favors as well. And if you don't go after them, maybe they could live, but if they live, they may consider it a base betrayal that you didn't come to save them. What do you do? The point of making the choice hard is so that you do not know them. Well, actually, there are 2 points to making the choice hard. One is that it really encourages role playing. You get to see what the character would do when faced with a tough choice, and that becomes this role play selection. It's a brick that lays the foundation of their own personal narrative. And the other reason is so that you do not know what they will pick. And that's kind of the running theme in all of this, is whether you're letting them select the main quest line or pick between different paths in a dungeon or giving them a hard choice, you do not know what they will do, where they will go. And that can be scary. As a GM, it is a bit anxiety-inducing to know that within a session, your players may do things that you are not mentally prepared for, which it induces some fear, but that fear can quickly become a thrill. It can become exciting. The unknown doesn't just have to be a source of disappointment. It can become a source of unexpected joy. You have to take it from someone who has run these kind of scenarios and many other GMs online who would tell you the same thing, that the times when their session has gone off of the cliff of their preparation can turn into some of the most memorable and fun parts of a whole campaign. Now, of course, at the quest structure level and especially at the quest selection level, you have time to prepare usually. Oftentimes, you can give them major selection options at the end of a session so that the next session you are prepared. But don't be afraid to also give them these options, the information, the hard choices within the session so that they can just diverge from whatever expectations you have. Okay, so those are the 3 main steps, which is give them options, give them information to be able to distinguish between the options, and make the choice difficult. Now what's left are the 2 supplementary steps to round it out. Now, in this video, I'm talking about very actionable steps that you can take, but I also have another video that is just talking about the design philosophy of the OSR style, and specifically how Pathfinder 2nd Edition, it's a good fit or in places a bad fit for playing that OSR style game. This video is on my Patreon for free. You can just join as a free member and get access to it. It's also a good thing that that video is hidden away in my Patreon, because in one part of it, I pick what is essentially a fight with a massive YouTube channel in this space, and I don't think I have the chops to go toe-to-toe with that channel in the public sphere of YouTube. So if you do want to go check out that rant, you can find it on my Patreon. Additionally, improvisation is something that comes up frequently in the OSR style, because if you don't know where the players are going to go, you will have to improvise. And there's a whole contingent of players and GMs who consider feats to be a gatekeeper to improvisation. This is something I address in a different video that's also up on my Patreon. So do check it out if you're interested in more design-focused discussions. Whereas this video and future videos are more likely to be about very actionable pieces of advice. Speaking of which, let's get to our 2 supplementary steps. Step number 1, dance with defeat. This is a play on the OSR principle dice with death, because in the OSR style, player ambition becomes so core to the focus of the player's pursuit that character death becomes the main defeat mode, basically. But in other games, character death is not the main defeat mode. Sometimes, in some games, a character death doesn't affect the story at all. And in other cases, players and GMs become so attached to the characters that they don't even want the characters to die. And I think that's completely legitimate because there are many different ways to emotionally torture your players that does not involve killing their characters, such as killing off NPCs, making them lose the main quest line. And that is the option that I want to discuss today, the dance with defeat. Now, this piece of advice may not apply if you're playing a diceless game, but if you are playing a game that involves dice and randomness, you want to ask yourselves, are dice a legitimate player in this game, or are they just a nominal player? If they're just nominal, then the dice can be rolled, but ultimately the game is going to go in the way that either you decide or the players decide. But if the dice are a real player, if they have an actual seat at the table, then defeat should be a legitimate option. All you have to do as the GM is just think through how you can make defeat dramatic. And I'm not just talking about losing a single battle, though that's also something good to think through. I'm talking about losing the main quest line. If the first narrative arc that the players pursue is to protect a village from an undead horde, what's going to happen if the undead horde wins? See, if you are not prepared for the defeat state, you will start nudging the players towards the path of victory. You may even start fudging dice. Heavens forbid. But if you can think through dramatic outcomes that arise from being defeated, then you give yourself this escape hatch if the dice decide that the players lose. In the case of this village being invaded, instead of just being, oh, everyone dies and you all run away, but you have nothing to show for it, you can say, okay, depending on how badly you lose, we can figure out how many villagers survive. And then the villagers, perhaps they decide that, oh, you help them out, so you are their heroes, you become their new leaders, and you have to lead them to safety. Or that there's a schism in the village, and it gets divided into half. One set of people just see you as inept rat catchers who cannot help them out, but the other smaller contingent does see you as their potential saviors in this situation, and those you can lead. So by thinking through the outcomes of the defeat states of a main quest line, allow the dice to have a legitimate seat at your table. That's the first of the two supplementary rules. And the second supplementary rule, which is directly just the principle stated in Principia Apocrypha, is be an impartial arbiter. And that means that if you have an idea of what would be the most narratively satisfying ending, or the most novel-like, or what would Brandon Sanderson like to have happened over here, you ignore all of that and you just look at the logical outcomes of the player's actions. Instead of trying to impose your sense of drama and narrative, you follow the logic of what the players have selected and make that dramatic and narratively satisfying. Both of these supplementary rules are just a way to say that the player's choice and the presence of dice has to not be illusory. Because otherwise, why even offer it, right? Why have dice in the game? Why let players choose when instead you could just tell them the story that you have in mind? Let the choices and let the dice have a real impact on your games. So these are the 3 steps that are simple, not necessarily easy, to giving the players their agency and putting the narrative in their control. Or, well, if I'm being honest, what it's doing is putting the narrative in a shared control between your players, yourself, and the dice. All 3 parties can now have a say in how the story goes. And that may be scary, but isn't that so much more exciting? I hope that increases the enjoyment of both you and your players. For now, this is me signing off, wishing you all engaging games. Ooh. Warm miso soup is really good for the throat while recording, but I'm also terrified of how many times I may have caught seaweed between my teeth.